Have you ever met someone who stays calm in situations where everyone else completely falls apart? The type of person who hears bad news, watches someone yell at them, or faces sudden chaos and just stays steady. Here's the strange part. They're not born like that. In fact, psychology suggests that the calmest people often started off anxious, reactive, or overwhelmed, until they developed one specific mental habit that almost nobody talks about. And before we get into it, let me ask you something. What if staying calm has less to do with emotions and more to do with how your brain predicts the future? Hold on to that thought, because it's the key that unlocks everything. Let's start with something counterintuitive. Most people believe calm individuals have strong self-control, but psychologists studying emotional regulation, like Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, found something different. Calm people don't fight their emotions, they delay their reactions. Think of it like this. When something stressful happens, most brains immediately jump to panic, anger, embarrassment. But calm individuals insert a tiny pause, sometimes just a fraction of a second. It's called a metacognitive gap. They're not suppressing emotion, they're watching it. There's an old phrase from mindfulness research. If you name it, you tame it. Calm people instinctively do this. But here's the twist. This pause isn't natural at first, it's learned. So the real question becomes, how do they create that pause, and why does it give them so much power? We'll get to that, but first, you need to understand the hidden advantage calm people use without even realizing it.
There's a psychological concept called self-efficacy, introduced by Albert Bandura. It's the belief that you can handle whatever happens. Calm people aren't calm because the situation is easy. They're calm because they quietly believe, whatever happens, I'll figure it out. This belief changes everything. If you think a problem is bigger than you, your brain sounds the alarm. But if you think you might be bigger than the problem, your brain stays steady, focused, and rational. Here's a real example. Firefighters in high-pressure rescue teams were studied for emotional patterns. The calmest ones didn't have lower heart rates. They simply viewed the situation as challenging, not threatening. Same event, different frame, different brain chemistry. But this raises another question. Where does this confidence come from? Because clearly, not everyone has it. And that leads us to the second psychological habit calm people rely on, a habit that shifts their entire mental landscape. Here's something fascinating that neuroscience discovered. The calmest people mentally simulate stressful scenarios before they occur. This process is called anticipatory coping. They don't obsess over worst-case scenarios. Instead, they quietly ask themselves, what might happen? How would I respond? What's actually within my control? By doing this, they reduce the surprise factor that triggers panic in most people. Think about pilots. Before they ever fly a real plane, they rehearse hundreds of emergencies in simulators. So when something actually goes wrong, it feels familiar, not terrifying. Calm people do a subtle version of this in everyday life, not because they're pessimistic, but because preparedness makes the world feel less threatening. But there's an even deeper layer, a psychological one, that explains why some people crumble while others stay grounded.
Here's something almost never discussed. Emotions are contagious. You've probably felt it. When someone panics, the room fills with tension. When someone stays steady, people relax. Calm individuals know this intuitively. Psychologists call it emotional contagion. But instead of absorbing other people's emotions, calm people subconsciously do the opposite. They project their calm outward. This creates a stabilizing effect on everyone around them. People borrow the calm. This ability doesn't come from personality. It comes from emotional boundaries, the quiet understanding that someone else's feelings are not my responsibility. This psychological separation prevents emotional overload. And once you remove overload, clarity follows. But clarity alone isn't enough. There's one more psychological skill calm people use, and this is the part most people misunderstand completely. A study from Harvard found something fascinating. When people face stress, their brain scans show massive overactivity in regions related to imagined threats, not actual ones. Calm people interrupt this cycle with one question: is this something I can control? If the answer is yes, they take action. If the answer is no, they let go quickly. This sounds simple, but it's one of the most powerful psychological mechanisms in human behavior. Here's why. Your brain has limited processing power. Worrying about things you can't influence drains it. But shifting your attention to controllable actions restores a sense of agency. Calm people do this so automatically that it looks effortless. But it's actually a trained mental filter, one that protects them from overwhelm. Now this brings us to the final question. Can anyone learn to be this calm? Yes, and the answer lies in one final insight.
Psychologists now view calmness as a trainable cognitive skill, not a fixed trait. People who appear naturally calm actually developed habits like observing before reacting, trusting their problem-solving ability, mentally rehearsing stress, setting emotional boundaries, focusing on controllable actions. These habits form a psychological framework that changes how the brain responds to uncertainty. You don't need a perfect childhood, a meditation retreat, or a Zen master for a mentor. You just need small, consistent moments of awareness, the tiny pause before the reaction, because that's where calm begins. And the more you practice it, the more your brain literally rewires itself to stay steady, focused, and grounded.